Hey,
I
did you
miss.
see? Did you see they're selling Girl Scout cookies?
They are selling Girl Scout cookies. In fact, if you go to our Discord, you can get a link of one of our great and wonderful fans. His daughter is selling Girl Scout cookies. So go to our Discord, the Grumpy Dungeon Master Discord, and you can find links to it on our website or on our Facebook, or just message the Grumpy Dungeon Masters, and I'll send you a link to the cookies. And buy her cookies.
Yeah,
I already
my
bought 5 boxes.
of course you did. My other dungeon master Johnny, his daughter always sells cookies every time or every year about
Aw.
this time, and I have never bought any from them, not
Uh-huh.
once. But somehow magically they always end up with extra boxes that just end up living at Johnny's house. So we're playing D&D and I'm like, "Here's $5." So somehow I always get Girl Scout cookies despite never actually buying them from the Girl Scouts.
Yeah, it's really weird because like they're like $5 a box, and like we never. I've never bought Girl Scout cookies in my entire life.
Yeah,
My wife has,
sure.
but
Yeah,
I've
me
always
either.
had Girl Scout cookies somehow, some way. Um, it, and so I think we got the Adventurefuls, which is like caramel chocolate with chocolate drizzle. We got the
That's
trefoils.
is the Adventurefuls, is that the new one?
I don't think it is.
I've never heard of that one. Maybe
It,
it's a
it
South Carolina thing. I don't know.
maybe. Um, we got the trefoils, the Adventurefuls, the tagalongs, the dosi-dos, and the Samoas, and the
Yeah,
Finleys.
yeah, the Adventure one I've never heard of. All the rest of them I'm very familiar with.
My wife loves s'mores, but for some reason she doesn't like the Girl Scout s'mores.
I don't like s'mores, but those I'm actually good with.
And then they have a gluten-free toffee one. Yeah.
Gluten-free toffee. I'm still not buying any, but if there's leftovers,
And the best part is like this fan of ours actually lives in Japan with his family. So even though she's a Girl Scout in Japan, you can still buy the cookies online with her link, and like you can see how many boxes she sold, and they'll just ship them to your house.
oh,
So
that's cool.
they don't even have to come out and like try to make you feel guilty outside of Walmart anymore. You know, you
Yep,
can get stuff online, get your fix online.
that's pretty awesome. I didn't know they
Yeah.
had the Girl Scouts in Japan.
I don't know if they do either. I don't know. That's for them to figure out.
Yeah, military base, I'm guessing.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, I
Welcome to
mean,
Charleston, where it's
yeah,
all military bases.
yeah, that's fair point. Fair point. Uh, where where I live, that used to be the case. I live pretty close to where Fort McClellan used to be. They closed it up in the late '90s, early 2000s. But like all half of the people I used to play D&D with were Army.
Yeah.
Lots of military plays D&D.
Oh yeah, definitely. And that's why Adventure League is so good, because you can make an Adventure League character and just carry it around to wherever you get I was going to say deployed, and play Adventure League there.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Mm.
I mean they used to have the thing, the RPGA,
Yeah.
which is the Role Playing Gamers Association, and that's how people did it back in the '80s and '90s.
Yeah, it's all long gone now, though.
Yeah, well, it isn't long gone. They've just pretty much changed the title of it and the way it functions, but it's the
Yeah.
same idea. You can just go to any gaming store who's part of Adventure League and bam, here's your character that you've been playing in these other games and just keep rolling with it.
Yeah. I couldn't do Adventure League this week because I had injured myself the day before.
Yeah, yep.
Um,
Here's
Pretty much. So I had to message the other Adventure League DMs and like, hey, the first one that I messaged, he's like a forever DM as well. I would, but I'm actually in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean right now, or whatever. Messaged the other guy, and he filled in for me, and hopefully cover. And I'm going to see how that plays out.
okay.
That, and
Right.
you have a little bit more flexibility with what happens.
And
Um,
yeah, with Frost Maiden it works pretty easily because the early parts of it are broken up into a lot of single side
yeah,
adventures. So
and that's what I figure I do. I've already spent hundreds of dollars in minis, so
yeah,
I'm drowning in miniatures just for them.
yep, you have all the minis you're ever going to need, and you have the experience at running a lot of that stuff because you've already run it.
I just gotta go buy more minis.
Yep. First time you ran it though was online, so you didn't even get to use all the minis you got for it.
No, I mean I bought new minis.
Oh, new ones. Okay.
Oh yeah, I got the snow owlbear.
Hmm.
The one that's like sitting on his butt. You're going,
Yep.
I got him. He's right there. Um, our good friend that sent us the frost painted miniature. I'm gonna get that painted up.
Yep.
It's gonna look real cool. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. We also played a lot of the homebrew for the Owl campaign. We're about 3 to 4 sessions left before I think we're done fully with that. So I'm
So you're
looking
getting
forward to
near
that.
the end, and have you decided what you're running afterwards?
I'm going to take a break. That way I have time to um, work on uh, getting everything written up and settled that way. That way I can spend my Fridays and Saturdays not really prepping, but kind of just like working on getting Dread of the Ice Level 2 out and getting the Owl campaign fully done.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm looking forward to Dread of the Ice Devil 2. I want to get stabbed in the ankles again.
I don't have a Mind Master in it at this time, but I'll put one in just for you.
Yeah, it that can be instead of the hidden boss that's in it. That can be the hidden boss. Doesn't even have to be a boss. Just a hidden guy who's trapped in a room somewhere. You open it up, and little fucking mind master who's invisible. So of course you can't see him. You're like, oh, there's nothing in this room. Then you start to leave, and oh, my ankle! Fuck!
It's a swarm of Mind Masters.
Oh Lord, nobody wants that.
The best part is too is like the one thing I forget about their because in the monster stat block it doesn't actually say this. You actually have to read like the details of it. But because they're tiny, all right,
Hmm.
they have +5 to their AC.
Yeah, tiny creatures always have had massive ACs.
Yeah, so like you cannot hit him for like you just stand there just like
Yeah.
just right in the ankle. Screw your calf.
Yeah, yeah,
Ugh.
not a fan. Not a fan of ankle biters. It's not fun.
So I was statting out all the encounters and stuff for like the area that they're in because they're actually in like this place called the Underforge.
Hmm.
And the way I kind of envisioned it first is I wanted a place where there was almost like a primordial dwarven race. And I may be able to play this later, but it didn't kind of work out for the stream because like the Feywild doesn't have dwarves.
Right.
Um,
Not
because they're
naturally, at least.
not naturally because they didn't there's not that kind of order and function that the dwarves of like the material plane have. You know, they're very business oriented. Here are the rules. Most are lawful or in some way, whether good or neutral or evil. You know, and like even the dwarven races that get captured and who are enslaved and tormented and twisted, like the Duergar, they're still lawful. They're not very chaotic. You know. Um, so the Feywild being a very chaotic place never had dwarves at all.
Right.
But they kind of have gnomes. Gnomes are a thing because the Korrid are a almost a subrace or an evolved form of a gnome.
Oh,
At
but
least
there are no more sub races.
we'll get to that on a YouTube video when you, I, and Panda can get together on that. But
Oh, I know. We're not definitely not going over all of it tonight by any means, or hardly any of it. But
and what
I have a
we're
lot.
referencing there is just the Morning Canyons book that comes out in 2 days on the 25th. When this podcast comes out, has pretty much gotten rid of all sub races and a ton of other changes.
I mean, they didn't really. Well, maybe they got rid of sub races and just made them races. It looks like.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't know. I still need to see the actual book itself, but from what the
Well,
from what
the
I'm
actual
seeing with
book
the changes,
itself,
I am not happy with a lot of the changes they're making. So,
doesn't come out till May.
or what does the PDF come out in 2 days or some shit?
No, what comes out on the 25th is a gift set And the
That,
gifts
yeah, that's right.
has the Mordenkainen's and Tasha's and Xanathar's.
Well, the book, I mean, technically, the book comes out in 2 days. Then it's just
Hmm.
you have to buy it along with two other books.
That you probably already have.
Yes, I absolutely have both of those other books.
Right. So why are they not putting out Mordenkainen's at the exact same time?
I don't know because
That's
what? What? Because WotC are money grubbers. That's why it's
I
all
don't
about
know.
the money.
It just feels very weird. Like why would it be? I mean, it could be because there's a global shipping crisis
Uh,
going on.
yeah, that's
Um,
possible too.
yeah, and like they put the order in for the gift sets or had to choose what do they want first, the gift set or the other one, and
Yeah, you can get 10,000 of these delivered on time. The other 100+ thousand you're gonna have to wait on.
so Korred, going back to what we're talking about. Korred are essentially trolls from like the movie Trolls. This is the best way to explain them. They have super long hair that if they cut the hair, it turns into whatever material that cut it. So if they use iron shears to cut their hair becomes strands of iron. And then they can like ravel it up and like tie you with that hair and it's extra strong and stuff like that. Their hair can extend and wrap around you, or they can use it for mobility purposes. They're literally trolls. Now I don't know what came first, the 80 trolls or the Korred trolls. I kind of was looking at the first edition books and like
I,
they were in there, but they
I,
didn't have like all the cool hair stuff that kind of
yeah, like
came a little bit later.
I vaguely remember Korrid being almost like satyrs.
Yeah, they do have hooved feet and that, but they are essentially trolls.
That
And I,
that that sounds
the
like a later edition thing that they've added because, and truthfully, this is very, very vague memories of them. I just remember them being like short versions of satyrs, kind of stockier build.
Yeah,
I
that's true.
Yeah, like I don't remember much else about them. I damn sure don't remember anything about them having hair that can do weird stuff with. So they probably added that to make them very different from what satyrs are.
Yeah, and like they like the whole thing about them is they like to dance around and have songs. Like they have Otto's irresistible dance naturally.
Yeah. Yeah, there we
So
go. Yeah, I'm looking at the pictures. Yeah, that's exactly what I remembered.
yeah. So they're very interesting. They ran across a normal Korred when they were like level 5. It probably would have beat them if they fought it, or it would have been a very hard encounter. He was like the master of arms of Invisors, like little gang. So this area here, like I said, I kind of wanted to have a forge that was still very dwarvish like. Okay,
Yeah.
but like what the Feywild like first iteration of the dwarves would have been, but failed to be because they didn't exist. You kind of follow there. So like because they're too lawful, they couldn't exist in this chaotic thing, and they kind of just got killed off, before they ever made any kind of like really cool advances in what they were. Okay,
Okay.
so that was kind of like where the idea sprang from. Um, and eventually, I kind of settled on this week that um, what had happened is more of like a clan of dwarves found themselves in the Feywild, found themselves with the Korred, and then kind of basically, since the Korred are very earthen creatures, kind of found a kinship with them and kind of just went underground to kind of hide away from the chaos that was the Feywild and lived in like a volcano.
Okay. So here's on the Korrid. I just did a Google search about this. There are species of Fae in D&D, taking inspiration from a Breton fairy tale, fairy tale known as the Corrigan. They essentially resemble a cross between a dwarf and a satyr, consisting of small, extremely hairy humanoids with goat-like legs who love to dance and party. And in fact, they are so similar in many aspects to satyrs that in AD&D, the Korrid was reprinted in the second edition Monstrous Manual as a sub-entry to the satyr.
Yeah.
And they have unique traits like a laugh that can stun, disproportionately powerful muscles for such a small creature, and the ability to create animated ropes that can entangle foes of their own accord by weaving them from their hair.
Yep.
And apparently there was a article in Dragon Magazine number 119 about the ecology of the Korred. So if you ever want to know more about them, you might want to try to dig that up.
Oh yeah, let me dig that up. I'll find that someplace.
I guarantee you every single issue of Dragon Magazine is somewhere online.
I'm in a physical copy.
Oh, you could probably eBay it, but you might drop for that one. Let's see. Dragon Magazine number 119. Thank you, eBay. Oh, it's not too bad. $20 maybe. Not even quite that
Yeah.
much. There's a copy for $9 plus shipping.
The pages are all stuck together. um.
You get what you
So
pay
yeah.
for,
So I wanted to use a cord, like kind of like a Korreds and the dwarves.
Yeah.
Um, being at the stage that they're in the story, um, essentially the story evolved from what I originally wanted to be in the Feywild to more domain aspect of everything that's kind of gone on. And essentially the story makeup for is that this domain that they're in is fragments of Selena Guide's memories. So she was killed by the Jabberwocky,
Hmm.
and the Hamadryad used the gem that they created to help defeat the Jabberwocky to essentially save her life, but the gem was made with very evil, chaotic energies. So it more in a sense, created the domain in place of saving her life, and the the areas that exist in this little pocket domain of the Feywild as essentially just basically or just areas of her memory. So like she went and talked to the Great Tree about the Jabberwocky and how to defeat it, and he kind of gave her advice to where to go. And then she went and visited the elves, the pre-Fomorian elves, and got the gem created so they could basically go forge the Vorpal blade.
Hmm.
And they basically made all these sacrifices of their people to stop the Jabberwocky because it also was affecting them. And then they went to the Underforge and they found the dwarves and the Korred there, and they worked with them to create the Vorpal blade for the first time. And then they went to go fight the Jabberwocky in his ancient ruins. But Jabberwocky, as it tends to do, um, got the jump on them, and they were not prepared for it because of that, and it defeated them. But it was able to be imprisoned through the powers of the gem, and it was imprisoned in the Shadowfell version of the domain, and that's where it's just kind of been gathering energy for generations. So when the players actually get to the Underforge, all the dwarves that were kind of copies from Selena Gladski's memories
Hmm.
were all dead. So they're now all undead dwarves. Undead dwarves. So there's a bunch of just undead dwarves, undead Korrid that are just walking around and, just kind of manning the forges and whatnot. So that's what I eventually landed on. I may change it a little bit for like the publication. I kind of need to kind of maybe rework and smooth out some story beats, but overall that's kind of what I am going with.
Sure.
Um, and so I had the Korrid. Korrid in fifth edition can they're small. They have a giant cudgel they can hit you with. They're very beefy, and they can shape stone. And I kind of took the liberties of they were fighting a cord on a stone table, so the cord jumped down and used shape stone to kind of like smash the table together because they're super strong. So I used shape stone on like the 5 feet that the player was standing to kind of like make it bendable, and
Hmm.
then smashed the table on either side of the player. Made him do a dex save, and he failed miserably. So he got smashed by the table, and he took some damage from that. But they were able to beat a bunch of Cord, and then they found like the Forge, and they found the Forge Master, and I wanted to kind of do something special with him because there's like a lava river that flows through the Forge that like feeds into the forges so they can like heat up metal and stuff like that.
Right.
And I had him be able to control lava. That he could take lava and cover a huge area, it's like a 3x3 square, um, at a point within 20 feet of him. Okay.
Okay.
So I had him basically kind of move across, see like where the players were, not all, at least one of them, and he threw the lava there and it covered that like little 3x3 area. Well, I may have to change this for the actual publication because 10d10 fire damage that technically would last a couple rounds is really a lot of damage to take.
What level are
And
they?
8.
I mean, that's a it's definitely survivable. 10D wait, it was 10d10. Never mind that. Okay, that's a lot of damage.
Yeah. I gave them a deck save. So if they take a deck save, they take half.
That's still a
Okay.
lot. Yeah, that's 5d10.
It's
I mean, it's probably only about 25 damage if they succeed, about 50 if they fail, but it's
yeah.
still a lot.
Yeah. They took 65 damage on the fail.
Whoa.
Yeah. The barbarian took it. He went from 105 to 40.
Yeah.
And then my wife is playing again. She's playing a new character, a bard tabaxi called Little Black Raincloud, who's like this emo little kitty who's like doing death metal. Um, because of course she is.
Of
I
course.
love her.
Sounds like she's
Um,
been watching JoJo with you again.
no, she watches a show called Agretzko.
Oh yeah, yeah, I know that one. I watched the first episode of that.
She even bought like a stencil for her car and put Agretzko on it.
Yeah, I think it's
Um,
Agretsuko, but I don't
I
know.
have no idea. I call it what I call it. It's a red panda that sings death metal.
Yeah, it's a really strange show. It has a day job where it works in an office, and then it karaoke's death metal. That's
Well,
literally the show.
yep. So she picked the bard up so she has some healing spells, like some support spells, and she basically drops cure wounds into the barbarian and like gives him 6 health. And I'm just like, oh, did you just take 66 damage? Okay, well here's 6 hit points. You're doing great now. um, so I may cut the damage back a little bit. I kind of had it like linger there too. So like
Yeah.
if you had stayed, like there was going to have basically at the end of the turn, if you still were staying there, you would basically be restrained by the cooled lava. Okay, you'll take maybe, let's say, I was gonna do 5d10 damage, and then you are restrained
Lava
from
doesn't
the
cool
lava.
that quickly.
I know it doesn't, but it's been imbued by magic. It's meant to cool quickly.
Oh,
He's
okay.
sucking the heat. Yeah, he's sucking the heat out. Yeah, there we go.
There you go. All
Um,
right. Just needs an
um,
explanation. That's all. You know, it's
yeah,
fine.
sure. Trying to catch me off guard. Ain't gonna work. I'm too slippery. I float
Like a
like an elephant and sting like a beaver.
like a greased up pig.
So that
That's the most southern thing I think I've ever said on this podcast.
so I like what he did. I have to tune the numbers a little bit more, I think.
Yeah, truthfully, I
Um,
would probably half that damage, but I don't know
yeah,
what the Forge Master stats are, so maybe that's appropriate. Maybe a little more.
they're all like. I decided to go with this area. I decided to do a lot of CR2 and CR3 monsters,
Hmm.
and I think he's a CR3 like Flame Priest or something like that. And it's more. I'm trying to overwhelm. I'm trying to kind of just nickel and dime them a little bit. I have a couple other things in store for them. I do have 2 big monsters in there that are much higher CRs, like a CR10 and
Ooh,
CR7 or 8.
yeah, okay,
But it's single monsters,
yeah,
so
yeah,
you know, I don't think they'll have much of a problem with them. Um, and this is kind of like softening them up before the final fight, kind of thing.
yeah. It's just
But
that amount of damage coming out of that one guy is
yeah,
that bumps him up from a CR3 to about a CR5.
yeah. I mean, they're going to have a long rest between this area and the next. It's just more. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like this dungeon didn't need to happen, and like maybe I should cut the going through the library and the Shadowfell out, and instead replace the Underforge with just kobolds and have them fight them more. I don't know, because like I'm not sure what the final area to be, whether it's just one big just ruins with just the Jabberwocky, or if it's just um, having it be a little bit of a dungeon crawl with a couple kobolds before him, like just maybe like 2 or 3 encounters before him.
Right.
Nothing like too crazy. No like dungeon to explore, just like, oh, here's 3 rooms and then the big guy kind of thing. Single direction, nothing to explore or anything. Like this one has a lot of places to explore and other creepy cool things.
Yeah, I mean
So
it's always difficult as the DM to sort of determine how linear you want something to be. Like I always used to run massive dungeons, 30 rooms with all the different hallways and everything. And sometimes you'll spend several adventures in a place like that. Over the past year or so, I've been running very simplistic stuff. Here's a room, here's a room, here's a room, here's a room. That's it. You're done. 4 or 5 rooms. You're hitting the key points. You're attacking the stuff you need to. And honestly, I feel like I'm almost cheating my players by doing that. I really kind of want to go back to these massive dungeons again. It's just the current campaign I'm running doesn't really. I haven't had opportunity to do that.
yeah,
Because they're going from one point to the next and just sort of running around all over the place, but they're not really getting sucked into a whole lot of dungeon crawls. They had one where they had to go up into a volcano, and truthfully I could have expanded that out a lot more, but I was kind of pressed for time to get things ready. If you're going to put together a 20 or 30 room or more dungeon, you need some time. You need to map this thing out. You need to plan the thing out. You need to know what's in every room. It takes a lot of effort.
yeah. A lot of it too is like with how people consume content nowadays too. That plays a big factor in my head too. Like I can give you a massive dungeon. Let's take Dungeon of the Mad Mage for example, where it's like 100 levels and 100 rooms per level. You
Mhm.
know, a massive just a massive like you're gonna be here a while, and
Yes.
that's like made for like the hardcore D&D people who can spend 10 to 12 hours a day playing through a massive dungeon. Whereas I think a majority of people do not play that way. They have 3 to 5 hours on average. I play in like blocks of 4 hours. Adventures League is anywhere from 2 to 4 as well.
Mhm.
So I think having like smaller, like 3 to 5 rooms to kind of like go through, almost like if your campaign is a series of one shots, like that's the best way to kind of handle it in a sense.
Uh, I don't know that I necessarily agree. I I think either one works just fine. And if you have, using your example, Dungeon of the Mad Mage, 100 levels, each one has 100 rooms, give or take. That's your campaign.
Yeah,
It really is your campaign. Every one of those 100 levels can have a completely different goal that needs to be accomplished just to get to that next level. You know, you're going to be 30th level by the time you ever manage to complete something that massive.
right.
Whereas, and that's the style of campaign. You can run that in 4 hours. You're not going to complete 100 rooms in 4 hours. You just aren't. That's not going to happen. But you just, they hit the points that they're able to hit in that 4 hour time span. And all right, we're done. Let's pick it up again next week. You get through 5 more rooms. Then the next time you get through another 6 rooms. Yeah. It just sort of plays out at the speed it plays out.
Right. Um, and I kind of get that, but I think just like if you look at um, you look at Frost Maiden. Like the biggest dungeon that's in that entire campaign is the Caves of Hunger near the end.
Yeah.
And even that is only like
25, 30. It was almost 30 rooms.
yeah, maybe 30 rooms, but it's relatively very um it's not very hard to kind of work your way through there in a session. I think
No.
your guys completed in a session
Yeah, like a
and
session and a half.
yeah, I think my group did it a session and a half because yeah, there's 30 rooms which is like, "Oh, you walk into this room, take damage. Next."
Yeah, I mean, most of them they were straightforward. A lot of them
Yeah.
didn't have anything in them. You know, they were just here's a little side channel. You search the room,
Yeah.
there's nothing there. All right, moving on.
Yeah. And so like Frostbane, I think, is kind of more the way they want things to be because you can just sit down and like run a game, have a couple missions kind of go off, and then you're done. They're focusing more on like the ambience of the area than anything else.
Mhm.
Random encounters, things that you can do without like a lot of prep time and a lot of setup. It's
Yeah.
just what I feel because even looking through Witchlight, a lot of that's the same way.
Well,
Like,
they
okay, now you're here in the Feywild. You find these two things, and here's your 3-room dungeon.
yeah, their campaign settings, their modules, whatever you want to call them. That is sort of the design. It's there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It works just fine. The there's one I can't remember the name of it in the Yawning Portal that is dealing with the Red Wizards of Thay.
Yeah.
I don't remember the name of that one specifically. That one is much more akin to the other style. There's I think 50-ish rooms or something in that dungeon.
Well,
And
yeah. I
you
mean, because the Yawning Portal is just is a fifth edition update to first and second edition campaigns.
right. I love it. You know, I grew up playing in a lot of those massive dungeons. I
Yeah.
have I have played under DMs who had notebook upon notebook upon notebook that was one single dungeon.
Yeah.
And that's as you said earlier, when for people who have 10 and 12 hours who can literally do nothing but D&D, that is for them to design.
Yeah.
I want that. I love that. I'm also old and I'm busy.
Right.
So
I
as
mean,
much as
I
I
would.
want, yeah, as much as I want to put forth some massive dungeon for my players to crawl through, I'm never going to find the time to do it.
Right. And that's kind of like, I mean, I like the idea of a massive dungeon, like where like you're spending so much time here, you're running out of rations, and now you got to find food in a
Oh
dungeon,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
yeah. But like, I don't think any of the campaigns in fifth edition have anything like that at all. Like rations barely come up in my game, and if they do, it's like, oh well, we've been out in the wilderness now for 5 days. Let's go home. All right,
Yeah,
we got all our supplies back.
Icewind Dale was the only one that even touched on survival, and after level 5 or 6, it's just more or less a forgotten thing.
I mean, you didn't have a ranger that just was like, hey, I have survival of winter, so I can just find food magically.
Yeah, yeah.
Fucking
Yeah,
rangers.
my group did not have that. They, however, did end up with enough money that they were able to buy them multiple dog sleds and just carry everything they needed, including firewood.
So speaking of that, um, one thing I had planned for them is to kind of like get lost in like the Feywild because it's collapsing in. Their little domain is kind of collapsing in on itself.
Mhm.
So I had like written this like little section as they're leaving the forest. It's time to go to the Underforge. That the forest itself is kind of like twisting, and the Dryad's magic that leads them to where they need to go is kind of getting all wobbly and unstable, and she can't really direct them the way they need to go. And my player who plays playing his ranger, his planar ranger, is like, hey, just as a reminder, I have this list of things, and I can't get lost unless it's magical. And I always know which way is north, and I can always divide by 0, and I know I have food forever. And
Like a proper goddamn ranger.
I'm just sitting here like, all right, well, none of this applies. And then I was like, I need something for them. I need something exciting that happens to them because this ranger just screwed over my entire party. So I was
And
like,
I mean, he screwed over your plans. He didn't screw over the party.
Fair enough. So I was like, hey, what's everyone's passive perception? And I got everyone's passive perception, and I think my wife has like 18 on her bar, and the next person's like 15. I was like, yeah, both of you guys notice that there's in the tree canopies up above, there's like something moving up there. And then they go, oh, what is it? I'm like, give me a perception check. And they look. I'm like, remember all those like worms and beetles you guys fought back in the library? Like the whole first chapter of the book? They're like, yeah, it's like you see hundreds of them up there, just hundreds of them. And they're like, okay. I was like, well, what are you guys gonna do? They're like, well, we're gonna just run through this place. So I was like, okay, as you're running through the place, the worms and the beetles just begin to bombard you and just dive off the trees and try to hit you like missiles. because
Flat.
because I just watched The Matrix.
Yeah.
And so I'm having them do like dexterity checks to dodge these worms that are basically kamikazing from the canopies of the trees and trying to hit them. And it took like meaningless damage, and that was my on the spot makeup of a weird thing, and I'm going to use that in the future.
I mean, it's a
For
neat
sure.
little encounter that you could, given more time, you could write up some actual purpose behind it.
Yeah, it's just some of the fill time. I mean, instead of making travel just boring.
Yes.
Because I have a ranger and I can't get lost naturally unless it's magical, and then I just have to, spin in circles for 5 minutes, and I know the way home.
Yeah, it's funny because I've been watching the Wheel of Time show on Amazon, of which
Yeah,
Panda hates terribly, of which I quite enjoy. And it's interesting because I'm seeing them travel around and they're going through all these different landscapes, these massive rolling hills, just all of these difficult areas to traverse. And we, as dungeon masters, oftentimes don't think about the landscapes enough. We just assume, oh, travel's easy, everybody's on the roads, shit, people just teleport where they need to go. It's an oversimplification of travel.
yeah,
When the pioneers came to America and traveled out west, I mean, geez, man, anyone who's played Oregon Trail knows how this ends.
dysentery.
Yeah, you end up dying of dysentery. Travel in rugged and untamed terrain is not easy. It is
No,
not easy by any means. You really need people who know what the hell they're doing, aka you need a ranger in your party, and you just need some tough son bitches to make that. That poor wizard is going to have the worst fucking time. He's never
yeah,
left the tower. He's got calluses on his thumbs from flipping through books, and next thing you know, he's going to have nothing but calluses on his feet after walking for one day.
that's why I think Lehman was the first wizard ever to go on an adventure.
Who?
Lehman.
Oh, Leomund, yeah, the guy who
Yeah,
made the hut. He's like, fuck
yeah.
living outdoors.
He's the first wizard to ever go on an adventure. That's my head canon. He was like, all right, F this. I'm making a new spell.
Yeah.
Here, and like then the second wizard was Tensor, and it was like, I ain't walking for shit.
Yep.
Floating
They made
disc.
the disc. You're probably right because Dungeons Dragons was the first known tabletop role playing game that I'm aware of it's the most famous. And as Gygax was running his friends and kids through those gaming sessions, these spells, a lot of them probably did not exist. And they
Yeah,
were made by some of those players. That hut probably was made by the person who played Leomund.
yeah.
They're like, fuck this. I'm creating a spell because camping sucks.
Pretty much. Um, Speaking of traveling and running through terrain, one of my favorite scenes in Lord of the Rings is when Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli are like making the trek across land to get
Yep.
to
Yeah, they're out or basically being paced by the orcs, if I recall
yeah.
right. Yeah.
And like I always felt so bad for Gimli
Oh
because
yeah.
like Aragorn being a ranger is gonna know the great path, and he's half elf anyway, so he gets a pass. And then Legolas, the greatest elf of all time, of course he's not gonna have a problem.
No.
And then you have Gimli, who all I can picture is Is he just like, all right, I'm gonna get going, and I'm not gonna stop, and you guys can't stop. I'm just gonna run behind you and not. I'm not gonna look around. I'm just gonna look at Aragorn's ass and just follow it
Yep.
until you guys stop. I am not helping you at all with this chase across the country. I'm just gonna focus on my cardio, my breathing, and passing my con saves.
Well, now speed wise, he would never keep up with either of
Stamina
them.
wise,
Endu-
he
yeah,
could.
endurance wise, he's never going to run out, which is actually sort of the antithesis for people who are built like that. That's actually
Yeah,
not the case. But dwarves
dwarves.
in D&D and just in fantasy are known to be incredibly hardy and able to go for a very long time.
So that's how I pictured the only way he got through that is because he was just running at full sprint while they're kind of like at a fast jog.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's just like, I gotta keep going, I gotta keep going, I gotta keep going.
Yep.
And like no one gives Gimli the credit as being the fastest dwarf in all of history
I mean,
because
he kept up with them.
he somehow he
Despite that,
kept up with
in every D&D except the Morden Cadence that's coming out now, dwarves move at 25 feet. Although now he's going to be moving at 30. So,
them. And elves are like 35.
well, no, elves have always been 30. Now, if you're a ranger, earlier editions, I think rangers got an extra 5 or 10 feet.
Yeah. So you got to give it up for Gimli. And another show just to kind of talk about weird shows that did travel really, really, really good was Game of Thrones.
Oh
Like
yeah, yeah,
seasons 1 through 5, like really put a focus on like, hey, we're marching this army from the north to the south, and like, hey, it's episode 7 after we passed there. It's been 3 seasons, and we're still marching this army from the north to the south
yep.
until season 7 and 8, where like Jamie Lannister can teleport.
Yeah. Those last couple seasons, yeah, they sped things up a lot. So,
Okay, so he's there, and in 2 days' time, he's in King's Landing.
yep.
That's like 700,000 miles. How did he do that on a horse? Is that
Uh,
horse magic?
yeah,
Can the horse fly?
yeah, he has horseshoes of the Zephyr. That's how that works now. Honestly, I really have considered in a future game of just removing teleportation magic. So I kind of like how they do it in at least in the show for Wheel of Time. Because there are multiple wizards in the show, and none of them seem to be able to teleport anywhere.
Yeah,
But there's basically teleportation. Think of them as teleportation circles. They call them the ways, and it steps you into another dimension.
yeah,
And whereas in that other dimension, you might travel 20 miles, it might be 100 miles in the real world where you come out at. So
yeah.
you have to know those pathways. If you don't know them, you could just end up in the wrong, side of the planet somewhere.
That's why I've always liked how warping works in
Oh yeah,
Minecraft,
yeah.
and Warhammer, and shit. What's that movie? With Sam O'Neill,
I have no idea.
with the spaceship. It's a horror film.
Event Horizon. Yeah,
Event Horizon. I've always liked that concept where like, yeah, we have the technology to warp, and you pretty much can basically just step through this portal and you wind up over here. So like taking Minecraft for an example. You go into the Nether, you walk 10 blocks, and for every 10 blocks you walk in the Nether is equivalent to 100 blocks up on in the normal pet world.
right.
Same thing with Warhammer. You go into the warp and then you warp through this other dimension and you come out the other end.
Yep.
And essentially, in the catch-all to all these examples is that other dimension's hell.
Yeah.
You go into hell and
White
move
Wolf.
fast.
Yeah, White Wolf, which was the responsible for the vampire, werewolf, wraith, all mage, those tabletop games. They had the
Yeah,
same thing. Werewolves could travel through like mirrors and stuff, shiny objects. They could step into them, and if you stay close, you can travel great distances fairly quickly. I think Dresden Files also kind of does it that way.
yeah.
But if you start diving too deeply, you end up in really bad places.
and that's like how I like to handle teleportation. It's like
Yeah.
we can open this teleport to there, from here to there. It's going to cost a ton of souls, and you might wind up in hell.
Yeah,
Good
like
luck.
I may include something like this in a future campaign. I'm not going to alter anything at the moment, but whenever I run my next gaming session, I because teleportation it really does sort of cheapen things.
Yeah,
My players aren't high enough level at the moment to teleport, but they do have access to an NPC who has it, and
yeah,
he's basically on call for them. That is sort of his function in the game. And they
yeah,
get they get a hold of him when they need to go somewhere, and he teleports to them. They sleep for one day, and then he teleports them where they need to go, because he can only do it once a day. But still,
yeah. I mean, when we do our LARP and do Shadowmoor, that's like the how do we go from Shadowmoor, our frontier town, to the other side of the world to handle X thing?
yeah, yeah,
Teleport. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's the only thing that makes sense in that context. But
yeah.
I don't want like my players having a teleport spell because then you can start getting the creative motherfuckers who are like, oh, I'm just gonna put this teleport rune in this teleport circle, and then I'm gonna throw that stone in the ocean, and then I'm gonna summon my teleport the opening for the other side and just drown the boss and drown the
Oh yeah.
Underdark.
Well, yeah, that doesn't work with teleport. It would work with the gate spell though.
Yeah.
Just open
So
up a gate spell to the plane of water. Here you go.
if that doesn't work for you, I also got fire and lava and
You like rocks? I
ooh,
hear there's a lot of rocks.
I have a gate spell to the plane of tentacles. You want that one?
Yeah, that one's always fun. Hello, Cthulhu. How are you?
Uh,
Yeah, teleportation is a necessity at times to move the story along to get things rolling, but it really kind of speeds things up and it does cheapen the adventure aspect of things. Now, for somebody
yeah,
who's just simply trying to run a campaign to go from one spot to the next, go for it. Use the plot devices you need to further the story. But if
yeah,
you want the players to get the full feel of living that life as if though are those characters, teleport is dangerous. It really removes a lot of that.
yeah. I mean, also too, like when you get to a certain point too, your guys are not gonna like. This has never happened, or it probably has happened just for fun. But like when your characters get to like 5, 10, 15, or 20 like that, like and you're traveling from your main city to the small town that has the problem that you have to deal with, you still should be encountering goblins along the way. That's like a constant threat of probably the world.
Hmm.
But they never talk about that. Like,
No.
oh, and then goblins attack you. So the arrow launches from a bush and goes to attack the monk. Does a 7 hit your AC? No. Do you throw the
Uh,
arrow back and kill him? Okay.
yes, I do. Now I speedily, at my movement rate of 180 feet, run through the bushes and kill 6 of them. That's the first round of combat. Yeah.
What I like, there's an anime called One Piece,
Yep.
and very beginning of the show, the show's been on for like a decade now or something.
Yeah. It's the one about the
Um,
pirates, I think.
yeah, the pirates, the pirate anime. And so, like, when the show kind of got off, there's always like it's the pirates versus the Marines, and the Marines would always have like their fodder troops that just came out in mass versus the pirates. Okay,
Mhm.
and there could be like an episode where like the pirate like they go and beat the big bad, but then the Marines show up and then they got to fight their way through like 20 or 30 pirates, and they get to their ship and escape by the skin of their teeth. Well, that formula doesn't change, but they keep throwing more and more and more fodder at the pirates to this point where like it's like the one pirate versus 100 Marines, and like he's obviously like super high level now.
Right.
Okay,
He's the
and these
20th level guy, and they're literally first level
right,
NPCs with the third level captain.
but that's a lot of drawing for them to do. So what they kind of like circled in is they have something called Hakai or hockey. I
Mhm.
can't remember one of those words.
Autofill.
and there's different variants of it. And the main pirate captain, Luffy, has the Emperor Haki. And essentially what he can do is with a glance, he can basically knock out anyone like level 5 and lower.
Okay,
So
so
like
he can just sleep spell things.
he just shows up. There's 1,000 fodder troop marines, so instead of like drawing them all out and him just like murdering them all, it's just like he does a glance and now they're all asleep.
Yeah, he's actually he's a very high level wizard with power word sleep.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's just he looked at us. Oh, we're all out.
Yeah.
Knocked
And I
out
was like,
100 hit dice of monsters just like that.
yeah. And it's very cool how it happened and how like it obviously was a problem they had to discuss when they were writing these things out. It's like I don't want to draw them fighting 30 Marines again,
Yeah.
and it's stupid to keep fighting these guys in mass. So I was like, well, Luffy can just knock them out with his full confidence and just sheer will.
He flexed at them.
Blam, gone.
Good.
Uh,
Yeah, I've seen one episode of it. It wasn't my style of anime, but yeah,
yeah.
I follow the premise. Yeah, because 20th level characters, they don't care about first level monsters. That quarter CR goblin is nothing to them.
Listen, you really don't want to do this. Trust me. It's like you see this, poof! It's a flaming sword.
Yeah, I
I'll
always
give you this, and we could fight. I'll fight you with my fist, and guess who's still gonna win?
I always sort of think of goblins or just low level threats as having some idea of threat assessment. We talk about it on Overwatch or whatever we're doing all the time with threat assessment, zombies and so forth. In that they can look at that level 20 party while they're hiding in the bushes, and they're like, no, we're not doing this. Those guys are way too heavily armored. That wizard is walking around with a staff with like a glowing orb on the top of it. And we've seen enough of these. That wizard looks at us and just incinerates 30 of us. No, we're just going to hang out here in the bushes. We're going to wait for the merchants to come by. Maybe nab a farmer or two.
You see that wizard with that stupid staff? It's a freaking Smurf. I can tell a Smurf when I see one. That
Nope.
fighter's a diamond fighter.
Yeah, nobody wants to mess with the fighter with the battle axe on his back that is leaking blood and screaming for souls.
I mean, I don't know. A couple orcs would really like that.
Yeah, but they know they're not going to be able to take it off of him. So I don't. That's why I don't include a lot of low level fights going after higher level characters, because
Yeah.
monsters have that threat assessment. They know what they can and can't take.
They just. But it would still happen. There would still be goblins and be like, okay, so we dug the hole and the horse is going to fall and break its leg, and then we'll jump on him and stab them. And then it's like, that happens. The horse doesn't break its leg, and then it turns into a dragon. And
Yes. Oh, they've been riding a gold dragon disguised as a horse this whole time.
I'm going to cast Fireball, and I'm going to turn it into, I don't know, ice, because I can, because I'm a sorcerer. And I'm going to extend the range from 20 feet to 40 feet, and extend it again from 40 to 80 feet. And then I'm just going to make sure my party members don't get hit with it, including the horse. And then I'm going to amplify it, because I'm a Tempest sorcerer, so all my lightning damage is full damage. And they take 80 lightning damage apiece. If
So,
they don't fail their save. My DC is 21.
so while we're on sorcerer things, before we wrap up this podcast,
We
Jacob.
still haven't finished the first discussion. Keep going.
Well, I don't even remember what the first discussion was about anymore. I think it was started with Girl Scout cookies or something.
Yeah.
So Jacob, our buddy Jacob, brought up something to me the other day, and I had to think about it briefly. So sorcerers can get something called subtle spell. It's a
Mm-hmm.
it's a sorcerer ability. You can spend one sorcery point to cast a spell. When you cast a spell, you can spend one sorcery point to cast it without any somatic or verbal components.
Yep.
And I don't know why I had never thought of this, but it makes perfect sense to me. If you have no somatic or verbal components, can you counterspell that? Because there's not really a tell that you're casting a spell. The only requirement would be material at that point. Now, material, the only thing I could find is you must be touching the material. It must be in your hand, or you have to be touching your focus. So there's no tell whatsoever that you're casting a spell if you just keep your hand on your focus.
So the verbiage to counterspell is the following: you attempt to interrupt a creature in the process of casting a spell. If the creature is casting a spell of 3rd level or lower, its spell fails and has no effect. If it's casting a 4th or higher, you make an ability check using your spell casting ability. The DC is equal to 10 plus the spell's level. On a success, the creature fails and has no effect. There is the casting time 1 reaction, and there's an asterisk next to it. The asterisk is which you take when you see a creature within 60 feet of you casting a spell.
And without somatic or verbal components, you can't tell they're casting a spell.
So, which you take when you see a creature within 60 feet of you casting a spell. So, if you're in the Harry Potter mindset, where you have to have your arcane focus out and you're pointing it at the person where the spell is going off. Okay.
There's nothing in the rules that
Right.
say you point it at anything. You just have to be touching it or the material component.
Right. That I'm getting there. So in the Harry Potter world, when you have to point your wand and cast the spell and say the magic words, whatever, and make the magic gestures. Okay, you're eliminating 2 of those, but you still have to point it with the focus. Okay. But most spells don't really work that way. I would say that I would either make you make a stealth check to cast the spell. And because you're basically making it hard for them to see, okay, they would then have to use their passive perception to notice it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I,
So in the majority of time, you know, if you're just going to stand there with your hands in your pockets and you're touching your focus and you just cast fireball and you've subtle spelled it, some magics may happen, but you're not going to notice it. So, but if it's like a really high level wizard with like super high passive perception, like above 20, they may notice it. Make them
yeah,
make a check or something.
yeah, because I've been thinking about it for a bit, and when he mentioned it to me a few days ago, my thought on it is that first time they do it, I'm probably just not going to allow a counterspell on the first time they do it in a battle
Mm-hmm.
because you're just not going to see it coming. You're not likely to expect it. You can't tell that there's something being cast. After that first casting, I would probably require the sleight of hand check. Yeah, and
An opposed sleight of hand check versus their perception.
right versus their active perception roll because they've seen they cast it the first time. Maybe even the first time require sleight of hand versus passive perception, and then after that versus active perception because they'd be watching for it after they've seen the first spell. But yeah, something
No,
like subtle spell makes it a lot more difficult to counter spell stuff.
I would give them a bonus to the sleight of hand though,
Yeah, yeah, because
like a
there really
10.
isn't anything.
Yeah, I don't mind that happening, but like I would give them plus 10 to whatever they rolled and their stats and stuff like that, because
It,
technically they could be sitting down, and I know this has happened in a game. I just can't remember when, where like the sorcerer was sitting down and used subtle spell to cast magic missile on the on his like restraints.
mhm.
Okay, and so just like the explosion happened, that's it. But he's still just sitting there. Or they did something else to get it to break. Because if you look at like spells like magic mage hand, like the mage hand, mage is pointing the wand, and mage hand is coming from their hand and reaching out otherwise. So there's always like a source of the magic. I've always envisioned that, at least in D&D, where like the magic is still coming from you to a place to do something. There's not like an invisible thing between you and out there. It's like when you throw a fireball, like the fireball comes out of you and goes there and then explodes, unless it's delay fireball, and then it just pops up over there.
Yeah, but a lot of that is our perceptions on how things look, the thematics of
Yeah,
it. But
but
it is.
even I've seen Eldritch Blast envisioned the same way, where they're pointing the wand. Like you look at the opening to like the Critical Role, and a couple others, they're casting spells from their
Yeah.
arcane focus.
Yeah, but it becomes an issue of rules as written versus what
Yeah,
we
but
thematically expect.
but I would say subtle spell takes away you having to point the wand. That's the somatic part of the spell.
That would be part of it. I mean, uh, for somatic, and I did read it earlier. It's basically you must have a hand free to make
Yeah,
whatever arcane symbols are necessary, as well as you must also be touching your focus or the material for the material components of it.
yeah.
So I don't think the pointing is necessarily a part of it. Obviously, people think of it that way, but rules as written, there's nothing that says that. So your thoughts on subtle spell is that if somebody has subtle spell and go and cast using it, it's pretty much uncounterable as far as
Yeah,
counter spell goes.
because I would still have there be the first would be versus their passive perception,
Mhm.
and then the second would be versus the active perception, and it'd be sleight of hand, and I would give them like a +10 bonus because you are using a resource, okay,
Yeah,
to make it subtle, and that first one is pretty much going to go off. It's guaranteed. Like it,
yeah,
it only makes sense in my mind because you've pretty much eliminated all that. You just have to be touching your focus. So like at that point in time, it's like how, or it could be stealth. Like how stealthily are you touching your focus?
yep,
You know,
yeah,
if your focus is like an amulet that you wear around your neck, like you got to be like tapping that thing. Go off, go off, go off. you know, you know. But if it's arcane focus and it's like in your pocket, and you just have your hands in your pockets around the arcane focus. Not that I do that at all with my focus at Shattermore.
yeah, yeah.
Your hand has to be on the focus. It is. It is. But I don't see it. I know. But it is.
Yeah.
I'm touching it right now.
Yep. It's in my left hand.
It's not even in my
It-
left hand. It's in my left pocket. I just kind of like, because I always like put my hand, I have my shield in my hand. And then like I kind of like put my thumb on my pocket or my belt to kind of like take some of the weight off when I'm just like standing around. And then in my pocket is my focus, okay, because there's no other pockets for it to be. So I can sit there and just like grab my focus and hold on to it, and I'm still holding my shield. I'm just casting my spells from that,
yeah.
without having it out in my hand in front of me.
Yep. So yeah,
So
that was we're kind of on the same page on this one. It seems.
yeah.
I
So
think it makes it. I don't know why it never really occurred to me until he brought it up, but it makes it way better
oh yeah,
than.
definitely.
All right. Well, you had mentioned we weren't done with the first conversation. I don't
Yeah.
remember what it was, but
So getting back to the very first conversation, go to our Discord, buy some cookies.
oh yeah, that buy some Girl Scout cookies, and if you can't get them for some reason magically on the Discord, maybe you only operate in cash. Yeah, buy some from somebody standing outside of Walmart or your local Piggly Wiggly store.
And they're not doing that because of the COVID.
Oh well, here where I live, yeah, they are.
Fair enough. Go buy Girl Scout cookies. Support the Girl Scouts, because if I had to choose right now from being a Boy Scout or a Girl Scout, I would totally choose to be a Girl Scout.
Yep. Plus, I love being a giant fatty who likes eating Girl Scout cookies.
No,
Even though
they actually have like STEM classes and like programming classes and like development classes, managerial classes. Boy Scouts is still like going out in the forest and making a fire.
yeah,
I am
both
not
are
a
important.
ranger. I'm not a
I,
ranger.
I
You
was
go
in
be a
the
ranger.
I was in the Boy Scouts. I learned how to make fires. I learned how to shoot bow and arrows and go hiking.
I want to learn how to better manage my team to get the effectiveness that I need, while also making all of my my budgetary goals.
Well, one of us is going to survive the apocalypse.
It's still probably me. I'm 6'9", and I'm just a monster.
Bye, Craig.
So long, the grumpiness has been your friend. Now go and spread anger through D&D. No, don't do that. Be happy, be friendly, be awesome, but maintain the boiling hate that inside your heart. I don't know, buddy. I'm rambling at this point. Shut me up and end this podcast.